This is an Irish independent podcast.
Well, somewhat inevitably, it was a stalemate in Cardiff. It just felt like it was that kind of a night. It was a 1-1 draw. Aviva Stadium tomorrow, Tuesday night, for a place at Euro 2025 is where we are. About 20, maybe even 25,000 tickets sold now for the Aviva. It had been 15,000 last week, so who knows? Next 24 hours, they might creep up towards 30,000. And we'll see what happens. David Kelly was in Cardiff for the paper, for the website. He's going to join us very shortly. And should mention as well, we talked all things Premier League in a separate episode. Damien Delaney was there. And there'll be rugby in your feed as well today with Rory O'Connor and Ian Madigan. Ronan Mullen is here. Hello.
Hi, Joe.
And Alanna Cunnane. Hello.
Hello.
Well, we said it was going to be terrible when we spoke on Friday.
Yeah, and it turned out to be basically exactly what we expected. But at the same time, I suppose all to play for now on Tuesday, and that's what they would have been looking for ultimately. That still be in it, and they still are. Nobody wants to lose, but somebody has to want to win just yet. I
think we're the nobody wants to lose air definitely dominated. There were very few, if people didn't see the game. Fullbacks were not overlapping, midfielders were not bombing forward, and it was just so committed. So ferocious pressing, tackling, no quarter asked or given, and then neither side really expressing themselves well enough to outmaneuver their work rate coming at them from opposition. So if the neutral was watching, I'd say that, oh my God. But I suppose from an Irish perspective, it's all very tense and worrying when they go a goal down. So the fact that they came back so quickly was very important. You'd make Ireland kind of semi-favourites for tomorrow, but more so on home form than much else, I think.
Yeah, I think even just having the Scotland Hampden Park thing in the back pocket, they've been here, they've done it before, but as you say, I think it's to their credit as well that they did show that they can come back after being down, because they wouldn't have had to experience that in quite a long time. Obviously playing lesser opponents in Nations League B and then Nations League A, the teams were just so much better that it wasn't even really a factor that they had to play themselves back into those games. So good that they did on Friday night, but yeah, you'd like to see a bit more attack and threat if you can at all, but I suppose that's at the expense of, you don't want to be letting in silly defensive errors either.
Yeah, the nature of two-legged football, and you know this going in, that Ireland went into that game and it was up to Wales to seize the initiative really. And if they weren't going to play their first card, then Ireland were happy enough. We're going to if you want to take this to the Aviva Stadium and decide it there, it's essentially a one-game playoff now. I think Ireland, if you had offered them that before the tie, they would have been delighted with that. So you just think they have the know-how and the wherewithal. This is tournament football essentially now at this stage. It's knockout. So having done it already, you'd like to think they can get the job done.
Yeah. Some of what Gleeson said afterwards, I don't feel the pressures on our shoulders now. I feel like it's in our soul. This is our home. We love playing at the Aviva. We love the crowd. It's magical. There's nothing like being at home in Ireland. Said a draw, probably a fair result across the 90 minutes. I'd be much happier with a win, but we knew it was going to be a battle. Evenly matched, ebbed and flowed, a battle around the pitch. They are strong. We thought it was a tight game. We saw what we expected from Wales, and we would feel we need to be tidier in the attacking third. And that's kind of the most important aspect. There's no question that they're going to be as committed, as hardworking, as organised, as diligent. It's just in the attacking third. Can they either A, knit something together, B, have a Ruisha Little John moment, or C, someone like Julianne Russell or Katie or Denise O'Sullivan just magics up real quality. I don't really imagine them suddenly knitting together great passages of play. I think it's going to have to be a little bit of Ruisha Little John look or moment of real quality. Just can't see Ireland. God, they tore Wales apart there very often. I don't see it.
No, I don't think that's actually going to play out at all. And especially, it was a big talking point after the game, how physical the game was, and there is that bit of bite between the sides. Yeah. And that's to be expected because they'll know each other. Leanne Kiernan lives with some of the Wales players, and herself and Niamh Fahey play with them Kerry Holland and Gemma Evans at Liverpool. So that's just one example, but a lot of these players know each other quite well, and there is that bit of bite. So hopefully we see that translate across. And like, even going back to the Hampden Park moment, that was Amber Barrett's night really, and she hadn't necessarily been playing or getting a lot of minutes around that time. So who knows who'll pop up and be the hero on the night here tomorrow.
Yeah. Penalties, you heard it here first.
I mean, like, the main thing you'd want from tomorrow is that home advantage is actually advantageous, because like, it was at the England game a couple of months ago, and in so much as that was a big occasion, a lot of the fans, and understandably, were there to see the England players. Like, there's some of the best WSL players, and England are in town was almost the vibe. Whereas tomorrow, there's not going to be that sort of glamour about Wales coming. This is, hopefully the crowd can actually have an impact on this game. And if it is going to be physical, let's also make it hostile. And it might be enough, you know.
Mullen calls for booing of...
Boo the national anthem.
Boo the anthem, boo the referee, make it nasty.
It's been a long time since the Welsh people have been in our YouTube comments, Joe. It's usually rugby, so maybe let's get them on the football now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Dave Kelly was in Cardiff, and he's going to join us to chat about, well, ultimately, very important goal from Ruisha Littlejohn.
Early cross away by Roberts. Piece is picked up by Littlejohn. From a long way out, oh, it's gone in! I think it will go down as an own goal for Olivia Clark. But Ruisha Littlejohn, she'd watched the crosses, she'd seen Wales defend them, saw her chance to let fly, and with a little bit of luck here, Ireland are level.
Yeah, and that was the key moment from an Irish point of view. Littlejohn afterwards said, "They've taken it off me, shambles. I need to watch it back." But I think, to be fair, it was an own goal ultimately. David Kelly was in Cardiff. He's with us now. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
Very well. This game played out as I think a lot of people expected. Slightly risk averse, a lot of nerves, a lot at stake, very physical, very hard running, creativity not to the fore, not much between the sides.
Yeah, I've been on BBC Wales on the morning of the game and suggested people bring a book because I didn't expect much to happen. It was kind of a game of moments, really, and the two goals were almost... The fact that there were goals was a bit of a shock. I expected a 0-0 actually, but then the two goals were almost surprising. Wales, that they produced their only real pattern of play, cut Ireland up, and obviously then that goal that you just heard, which was an appalling goalkeeping error, and a bit of ambition, risk reward, no risk, and a bit of reward for Ruisha Littlejohn. So the goals were kind of out of the blue as well. It sets it up for what we always thought was going to be the decider tomorrow night. As I had mentioned last week to a few people, I mean, I think one-legged playoff would probably been best, but you know, UEFA and FIFA kind of have gone down the road for playing off for everything. So that is why we had the extra game, but. Yeah, it's set up, and I mean, I think you know, Ireland. You can see by their approach at the start of the second half. You know, you see things when you're at a game, and there was just a sense that, you know, having maybe rocked psychologically a little bit by the goal, even though they responded 10 minutes later and did kind of, they didn't unravel. There was a sense that we'll just take this and get out of town and go back, and you know, I think they know they can be better. I'm not too sure, even though they insisted they could. I'm not too sure how better Wales can be. But then I would have seen more of Ireland, obviously, than Wales. Yeah. Well, I certainly thought Wales were better in possession of the football in the friendly, which is the only other Welsh game I've seen really this year, against Ireland back in February or March territory. They looked very comfortable on the ball that night, whereas, I don't know, maybe you have a better sense of it in the stadium. Maybe it's all very tense, but like neither side really putting together any kind of fluid passages of play. It's all real sleeves rolled up, determined, like no quarter asked or given, but almost like easier said than done. If everyone just relaxed a little bit and we could start play a bit more football, it would be far more effective. It's just like the stakes are just so enormous for both sides that I don't think much football is going to break out here tomorrow either, if I'm being honest. Yeah, that's probably it. I mean, you know, I can see, obviously Ireland probably need to make a couple of changes, at least one, I guess, injury enforced. But like Wales do have a lot of pace on the bench. We saw that in Slovakia in the semi-final when they finished strongly, and they did. I thought they might use it from the start. but they didn't. They actually started with the same team, and I think they might do the same again tomorrow, just to try and, dig their heels in and bed in for a long night of toil, try and frustrate the Irish again, because the Ireland haven't been that proficient. Obviously, they've been in an elite phase of competition in terms of the Nations League, but they're not. They don't score a hatful of goals. You saw that even in Georgia, 3-0 at home the last time compared to 11-9. It was 6-0 away. They don't score a lot of goals. There's not a lot of goals in that team. So I think Wales would be banking on that and kind of thinking, again, if they can nick one with a decent passage of play or corner, one goal could be huge, especially if it's a lead goal and Ireland start getting a bit nervous. But yeah, I mean, the stakes were very high. It's interesting. Rhian Wilkinson seems to kind of, the old doth protest too much, sort of, she was liking it to a game of tennis, and that, the fiendish Ireland were denying her ballers the chance to shine, which I think probably a message more for her own players rather than touching on any reality, because I just don't think they were good enough to put together any passages of play, and Ireland weren't exactly.
No, they weren't.
I thought they pressed quite well, but I mean, Eileen Gleeson afterwards said it was quite fitful, the pressing, and they pressed the wrong people at the wrong times. But it was hardly coruscating pressure. I just don't think Wales are that good, and I don't think they're better than Ireland. Now, I'm not saying that Ireland are vastly superior either, but I just think they are better.
Yeah, I think that's about right. It was telling, even Gleeson was asked about what needs to improve for tomorrow's game, and again, in keeping with the tone of this contest, she said, win more first balls, win more second balls. It's like that work rate piece as opposed to express ourselves a bit more. On the lack of goals, like, it is a problem for the team. To her credit, under Vera Pauw, they did get to a point, I thought, the team, where there were patterns of play which would result in, like, Katie McKay putting in her fair share of crosses or getting on the ball in dangerous positions. Whereas just at the moment, like, you think about this past year, you used the word moments earlier. It's been things like Julianne Russell getting on the ball and like the moment of real quality, in that win against France, for instance, and just like a wow moment. God, that's a little bit out of keeping with the general flow of the game, kind of a moment. It's not like you watch Ireland and there are patterns jumping off the page and overlaps for fullbacks and McCabe in routine positions where she can whip in dangerous balls. It is a little shapeless when they're on the ball. They're not a very good attacking team. It's hard to imagine them coming out on Tuesday and creating a glut of chances again. It's going to be a little moment of quality from an individual as opposed to they're going to pick Wales apart. They've gone, maybe it's stagnated, but I feel they've almost gone backwards a little bit, Ireland, as much as Gleeson came in on the back of those, hammerings of League B teams and talk of more expansive football. A year on or into Gleeson's reign, I don't think the team are any more expansive. I don't think they are playing especially good attacking football.
Yeah, I think, we're in danger of getting maybe sepia tinted about the Vera Pauw. I mean, a lot of that wasn't very pretty. A lot of that was, very rudimentary, and Heather Payne was for a lot of time, the striker and kind of running the channels in a Tommy Coyne kind of way. So, and it was, a long ball up and try and knock down and stuff. So
but against, I suppose what I'm getting at is, for sure, against superior opposition, it was absolutely pragmatism to the fore. But to use a ready comparison, against Georgia, they put like 13 goals in them, and there was a bit more going on at times, I felt.
Yeah, I mean, the argument I'd make would be that the pretension that Eileen Gleeson has promised in terms of expansive football, and indeed the players, whether they were psychologically or sportingly restrained by the previous manager in various aspects, it hasn't really been, vividly illustrated. To say, and a bit like before, like it always was. It's more about moments really, and being hard to beat. It's not a particularly attractive team to watch, but I don't think it ever really was an attractive team to watch. I mean, that Georgia team were put to the sword, and they've slightly improved since. But I don't think that's kind of a measure. In the women's game, the disparities are so vast.
No, it's true. I don't want to overstate the point. That's why I sort of said stagnation, maybe even gone backwards a little bit, but certainly stagnation. To your point, it hasn't been the great kind of post-Pow. Woof! Look what was in this team all along, attacking football.
Yeah, and the disappointment would be that, like, effectively, I mean, the Nations League draw for the top tier was made, for that League B was made like last May before the World Cup. So. And obviously Vera Pauw wasn't in charge for it, but the assumption that you top that would get you a playoff, which would be an easy semi-final playoff, as it was against Georgia. So effectively, you've had, an 18-month build-up to this final two-legged playoff against Wales. So, that's a lot of time, and the analysis would be, well, has there been a development in the pattern of play? Has there been more expansive football? I mean, it's really difficult to discern that. Obviously, it was difficult in those League A games to produce any. But even in the friendlies against Italy and that attempt against Wales, a friendly, albeit, but they changed their formation for the first time in 37 games to a four-woman, and it was dismantled by half time. So there have been a couple of interesting developments, but more, Julianne Russell has always been there. She's kind of come back. It's kind of a Deus Ex Machina moment. It's not an emergence from within. Marissa Shiva wasn't really playing at all, has come back in and has done quite well, really. But heading to a Euros, which if they get to the European Championships, is compared to a World Cup, it's obviously going to be more difficult to get out of a group. You kind of wonder, where is that progress towards expansive football, and are they, good enough apart from the obviously world-class players, Katie McCabe and Denise O'Sullivan? Do they have the quality of players to perform like that? A lot of them are playing at second division level. We've only got one goal scored at WSL, and that's a defender. This year, so the quality of player isn't really there either, and that disparity between the kind of top 10 in the world, the mediocre middle bunch, and then the also-rans is compared to the men's game. It's just differences are so vast. And even the France game, France, it was the second team, and they were already playing for the Olympics, and it was kind of irrelevant. So that's. I don't expect to see it tomorrow night. Now they could wow us, but I think tomorrow will just be digging in and hoping their experience and quality and their bigger personalities. I thought they'd bully them in Cardiff as well, and that's probably what Rhiannon Wilkinson was talking about in terms of her team not being able to play their beautiful game, or really physical and really bully them, and they have that kind of presence that they've been here before.
Yeah. And there is a toughness to them. There's no doubt, and that's their kind of their strongest suit in many ways. We reckon 25,000 now at the Aviva, so it's jumped about 10,000 over the last week, which is good, and maybe another 5,000 gets it over the line to 30, which would be a really good atmosphere. So Eileen Gleeson is trying to tap into home advantage in a big way. It's in our soul. This is our home. These are the kind of things that she's talking about. So in terms of occasion and atmosphere tomorrow, Dave, what are you expecting?
Well, heaven forfend we start talking about Aviva atmospheres. But it's just the women's game, it's a bit different. Cardiff at 16,000, they were at home. They've never been to a major tournament, and a lot of the time was deathly silent. Obviously, a bit of a whoop for the goal, but they were largely silenced. Now that's probably because nothing was going on, but it's just a different atmosphere at women's football games, and that's not a pejorative judgment. It's just an observation that it doesn't have the same, like there isn't a persistent Although interestingly, in Georgia there was, in Tbilisi, they had a singing section full of men actually, which made noise for the whole game, which was kind of fun for them compared to the last time they'd been there. But there isn't a persistent kind of noise, clamour. There has recently been in Tallaght the odd outbreak of the Katie McCabe kind of chant, but it doesn't. Like even tomorrow, like there's a bit of needle between these teams. I mean, they didn't like a bit of the stuff Katie McCabe did in February. There was a couple of obviously the Risha Littlejohn with Jess Fishlock on Friday, and just again complaints about physicality. So like if that was, I think, a men's game, there'd be a bit more about it tomorrow night. But I don't think a lot of people. And again, this is not pejorative; it's just an observation. I don't think a lot of people will know that narrative or will have that narrative kind of, let's go out and, do these dirty Welsh whatever. I don't think that's kind of theirs. So there'll be a lot of people there, and they will get, encouraged in if they have dark moments. And 26,000 is better than 16 or 10. In a stadium like that, so that's it. It's hugely encouraging, especially since a lot of times in Tallaght they've struggled to get a full house in Tallaght. So it's a big game, a second major tournament awaits if they can get through it. So it's been a constant complaint of mine that not enough people are supporting women's sport, and not enough women are supporting women's sport. So I'm never going to complain about a big crowd, even if they're, not making noise every minute.
I guess it's hard to judge these things. It feels like it hasn't taken centre stage the way the Scottish playoff did 2 years ago, and the build up to Hampden. It felt bigger 2 years ago for whatever reason. Maybe that's because it was a first major tournament. Maybe that's because it was a World Cup. But maybe it's just a bit busier, more going on in the sporting landscape. I don't know. But I guess all of the stuff we're talking about, style of play and the quality of the kind of the fare on offer or the atmosphere, if they do get over the line, and if it's 1-0 in the 89th minute after an appalling, fixture, all of that will kind of fade away. And you'll suddenly have this team doing a lap of honour in front of 30,000, 25,000, going to a major tournament. I suspect there won't be cameras in the dressing room catching any chanting that will be going on and all of that kind of
live streaming,
from 2 years ago. And so the thing will suddenly blow up in a big way once again. It's like just this last week it hasn't caught fire, but it could very, very quickly, and this team could really put themselves back on the map in a huge way. That's the very obvious prize on the line here for them.
Yeah, I mean, the World Cup was the first one, and I mean, you see this with the women's rugby team as well, and even the Olympic team. That remember they qualified for the Olympics. It was a Sunday morning here, and I don't think anybody was filing. I was working, and I was just kind of watching it. They qualify for Olympics on a Sunday morning at 10 or half 10, like when most people are, walking the dogs or whatever. So, these things happen in the margins a lot. And the build up to this has been, as I say, weird, because we knew the path towards this almost before the World Cup. And then you had the kind of, beating kind of no-mark mediocre teams in League B, and then going to League A and struggling against teams that you were never expected to beat. So, it was just kind of topping along, and again, as there isn't that clamour of interest in it consistently. It doesn't have the same kind of grip. But then you saw once the Irish rugby team kind of regained their status in the Six Nations last year, WXV1 happens, suddenly that becomes a thing again where, they'd fallen off a cliff and nobody was interested in them. So I think it's a women's sport thing that until the moment happens. And then it's like a lot of people kind of, how did this happen? How did we get here? But aside from that, it really is operating in the margins of Irish sport a lot of the time, and indeed Irish society, I reckon, and that's, again, not a pejorative judge. That's just that's what I see,
Yeah. So it sounds like you're leaning towards Ireland to get it done tomorrow, just about kg affair, home advantage, and that kind of teak toughness experience maybe to be the differential. Would you be very confident in that prediction, Dave?
I'm not hugely confident. I thought going in 2 legs would suit them, because they're that greater experience and being home second. But just Friday kind of reconfirmed that they still are capable of defensive lapses. 2 players getting caught out on the left, and then 1 player playing too deep and not getting an offside, and then making a horrible defensive attempted clearance. So they can still compound errors in terms of defence, and that worry that, especially when asked, possibly, as I think Wales will do by maybe retaining their pace on the bench, being asked to kind of try and break down a lowish block that they don't really have necessarily all the materials. So then how much do they kind of gamble on pushing Katie further up to work with Denise and get more combinations going, because they just don't get enough combinations together. Ireland's 2 best players. It's remarkable, really. So then you're worried, well, does that pull Katie out of the left hole? And they've got Kerry Holland in there who can run riot. So I'm not hugely confident. I mean, I suspect they will do it, but I wouldn't be putting a pile of notes on it.
No. Well, listen, we'll talk to you on Wednesday about Ireland's penalty shootout win to get to the Euros, perhaps.
Yeah, they didn't practice actually in Hampden. It was interesting. Vera will check it out later with them, but she said they couldn't replicate it. But it could go all the way, which I'm sure the guys on the desk would be delighted.
Yeah. Let's talk Wednesday if you're around after the game. I know you're going to it on Tuesday from Cardiff, obviously on Friday. Dave Kelly, thanks so much.
Cheers, Joe. Thanks.
There we go. That was Dave Kelly. Interesting, I think, fair observations as well at just where this team is in Irish life. They'll be the bandwagon, but it has been it feels more low-key this time around than Hampden Park 2 years ago, is definitely my sense. I wasn't sure why that was, but David's point maybe about just the strange cadence of the year is probably the reason, because League Nations B, whip everybody, Gleeson gets the job. League Nations A is very, very tricky. Then you've the inevitable win against Georgia, whereas I guess the build-up to Hampden was the failure of not making the Euros before, and it's got to happen now, and then the group stage is going well, and it built up to a crescendo, but there were about 10 steps along the way that the public gradually got on board with the team, whereas the last year it's been so kind of it's not built, it hasn't grabbed people, I think, in the same way.
Definitely, I think it has been more muted. I think if you swapped it around and had Nations League A and then Nations League B, you had a lot of hype off the back of Nations League B, and passive fans, let's say, who maybe were paying attention when it was in the news headlines, would have been like, oh my God, we're beating everybody. And then all of a sudden it's, okay, we're losing out, sometimes heavily to the likes of England, France, Sweden, but they're top teams in the world, so it was to be expected. But
there's no bandwagon to get on.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's going to be a full-on, bandwagon's going to magically appear out of nowhere and people on it on Tuesday night. It hasn't been a slow burn, this one. So we'll see. I think penalties. I just watched that game. The creativity very low. Could easily see 0-0 or 1-0 again, and I'm thinking penalties, and sure, why not Ireland to win? Anyone want to go any more confident than that?
No, just to refer back to my earlier point, I suppose now it has flipped.
You want to boo them?
No. My earlier point where I was saying about Wales had to take the initiative in Cardiff and they didn't really.
Yeah.
Whereas now Ireland, it's Ireland's game to go out and win now, and does that leave them susceptible? Like, they're not the most expensive team, and if I was talking about the crowd being a positive, it can also, if things start to get angsty, it's like 70 minutes gone, it's 0-0. That can play on minds as well. So
I think if it's 70 minutes and 0-0, both managers say, right, shut up shop. So we'll see. What do you reckon?
I think, it'll either be one moment like the Amber Barrett toe poke, famous now at this stage, and you actually couldn't really call who it's going to come from.
No.
Or it'll literally go down to the wire. I think it'll be interesting to see, you say, on the crowd. Like, obviously it is quite a younger crowd. They're obviously trying to develop that continuously and get more people of all age groups in. So maybe it is a thing, if there was a bandwagon effect to it, that you would get that bit of more of a hostile atmosphere and get them cheered on, because what you usually get at the minute is Katie.
The young people are too nice. They don't know, like, you're here to vent your anger at the world at these players. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll talk on Wednesday.